Hello, everybody.
Mr. President.
Hi, Steve. Hi, Dad. Nice to see you. Thank you very much.
President to comment on the North Korea summit.
June 12th. Well, many things can happen, and a great opportunity lies ahead potentially. I believe that this is a tremendous setback for North Korea and indeed a setback for the world. I've spoken to General Mattis and the Joint Chiefs of Staff and our military, which is by far the most powerful anywhere in the world and has been greatly enhanced recently, as you all know, is ready if necessary. Likewise, I have spoken to South Korea and Japan, and they are not only ready should foolish or reckless acts be taken by North Korea, but they are willing to shoulder much of the cost of any financial burden, any of the costs associated by the United States in operations if such an unfortunate situation is forced upon us. Hopefully, positive things will be taking place with respect to the future of North Korea. But if they don't, we are more ready than we have ever been before. North Korea has the opportunity to end decades of poverty and oppression by following the path of denuclearization and joining the community of nations. And I hope that Kim Jong-un will ultimately do what is right, not only for himself, but perhaps most importantly, what's right for his people, who are suffering greatly and needlessly. All of the Korean people, North and South, deserve to be able to live together in harmony, prosperity, and peace. That bright and beautiful future can only happen when the threat of nuclear weapons is removed. No way it can happen otherwise. If and when Kim Jong-un chooses to engage in constructive dialogue and actions, I am waiting. In the meantime, our very strong sanctions, by far the strongest sanctions ever imposed, and maximum pressure campaign will continue, as it has been continuing. But no matter what happens and what we do, we will never, ever compromise the safety and security of the United States of America. I want to make that statement, feel very, very strongly about it. Our military, as you know, has been greatly enhanced. Will soon be at a level that it's never been before. Our approval of $700 billion this year and $716 billion next year, largely due to the help of a lot of the people with me today and standing right here. We appreciate. But we had to do that for our military, and we've done it, and hopefully everything's going to work out well with North Korea. And a lot of things can happen, including the fact that perhaps, and would wait, it's possible that the existing summit could take place or a summit at some later date. Nobody should be anxious. We have to get it right. Okay, with that being said, we have something else, which I have to tell you, all of you, Chairman, Mike, and everybody.
President Trump addressing Americans and explaining his decision to essentially cancel the summit for now, but holding out a fig leaf to the North Koreans, saying he's willing to have this summit again if the terms are better again. President saying he's going to continue maximum pressure. I think this is one of those times to remind folks that a summit isn't successful potentially down the road if you don't have moments like this, if you don't have a moment where you think it may not happen, if you don't have a point of walking away. There's no doubt there are plenty of people left and right in Washington, D.C. that are pleased with the president's decision to show a willingness to potentially walk away. Let me go to my colleague, Kristen Welker, down at the White House today. So, Kristen, I think what's interesting here is how much of this decision is through just the lens of what's going on with North Korea, and how much of this decision is tied into the tense negotiations over the trade surplus issue with the Chinese?
That's certainly a part of it, Chuck. There's no doubt about that. In recent days, President Trump really pointing the finger at China, indicating that they may be responsible for the fact that North Korea has to some extent threatened to first pull out of that planned summit, essentially saying that China hasn't been tough enough from its end. China, of course, a critical ally to North Korea, and the United States has broadly seen that China is the linchpin to making sure that this summit moves forward, making sure that the pressure is ramped up on North Korea. So I do think that's a key piece of this. In speaking with administration officials, Chuck, there are other issues at the forefront of this. The fact that North Korea seemed to move the goalposts when it came to denuclearization. Of course, the president, the White House had said that they need to come to the table ready to talk about complete and immediate denuclearization. You heard President Trump really change his language in recent days, saying, well, it is possible that's not a realistic goal. And then, of course, in recent days, ramping up their threats overnight, referring to Vice President Mike Pence as a political dummy because he dangled the possibility of a regime overthrow if North Korea doesn't come to the table on denuclearization. So I think there's a lot of factors at the forefront. I am told those overnight threats, Chuck, were really the bottom line, the straw that broke the camel's back. As you point out, we are getting reaction from lawmakers on Capitol Hill. House Speaker Paul Ryan calling this 100% the right decision.
Kristen, Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, essentially read the president's letter at a hearing earlier this morning. What was interesting there is he made clear that the Japanese were told about the cancellation. He made clear that obviously he was with a pretty high administration official in the Chinese government yesterday, but he seemed to dodge the question about whether the South Koreans were told in advance of this decision. He didn't dodge on Japan and he didn't dodge on China. Why would we not inform the South Koreans in advance if that's the indication that Secretary of State seems to be hinting at?
It was a very notable omission, Chuck, and of course notable because the administration has said that South Korea has been working in lockstep with this administration. But remember, this isn't the first time that they have moved forward and not necessarily kept South Korea in the loop. North Korea has really tried to drive a wedge between the U.S. and South Korea.
Is there a concern, Kristen, is there a concern that South Korea wants this too much?
I think there's a concern that South Korea wants this too much. And I also think, Chuck, if you speak to some folks here on both sides of Pennsylvania Avenue, there was a concern that President Trump wanted this too much as well, that he was doing a victory dance. He was talking about receiving the Nobel Peace Prize before actually sitting down at the negotiating table. There is no doubt, though, South Korea wanted this very badly. Of course, they brought that initial offer here to the White House that Kim Jong-un wanted to sit down and talk to President Trump. Remember, it was the South Korean diplomat who made the announcement that this meeting was going to happen in the first place. So they were really spearheading this, and that could be an indication as to why they were left out of the loop in this very critical moment, Chuck.
I think the important point here, Kristen, that we're trying to explain to viewers, there's a lot of moving